Welcome to Scots Wisdom. Today we are going to be talking about something a little more different. Today we are going to be talking about something scientific. We are going to be explaining how the universe functions. Scientists have been fascinated with looking up into space for decades now. And the foundations of modern science, from Isaac Newton and Pasteur and Copernicus and Galileo and so forth, have all laid the foundations of modern science, which has helped our society flourish. Yet today, I think there are some universal laws which I don't think many people are well aware of. As of recording this, I confess that I do not hold any kind of PhDs for studying space and whatnot, but through my own studies and common sense, I found that there are certain rules which I think everyone should know about how the universe functions. So without further delay, let's get started. I'm going to start off with the fact that almost everyone agrees that the universe had a definitive beginning. And these laws I'm about to mention dictate how the universe came to be. And these laws can be seen in everything all around us. Let us begin with the laws of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics is a branch of physics that deals with heat and temperature and energy. From my research, there's been a large emphasis on the first two laws of thermodynamics. The first law states that whilst energy can be converted into matter, matter cannot be self-created nor self-destroyed by natural causes. This law thoroughly explains that nothing we see ever explains its own existence. Everything we see around us came from something that came before. Take this book, for example. You would call me utterly stupid and crazy if I said to you that this book came out of nothing from thin air. You'd call me crazy for stating that all the ink just happened to have fallen into place naturally to form all those intricately made words, and the pages happen to be of that rectangular shape, and it just so happens to have the author's name on it just by chance. Now, of course, this is completely absurd. Of course this book had some intelligent design to it. The reason this book exists is because an author wrote it and made it. And this book is part of a collection. How would you respond if a car or an elephant suddenly popped right in front of you, right this very moment, out of nothing, with no explanation? You would ask yourself, where did that come from? That's because you instinctively know that everything has a cause. So that's the first law of thermodynamics: nothing explains its own existence. Matter cannot be self-created nor self-destroyed. The second law of thermodynamics dictates that everything we see around us is disintegrating. Everything is dying. That's why we see mountains crumble apart. That's why people age. It's how time passes by. It dictates that everything works like a wound-up clock. If you wind it back, it starts from a certain position, and then as it keeps going, it just gradually gets weaker and weaker. At the same time, though, the second law of thermodynamics is essential to how we digest food. Nothing is spontaneously growing. Everything's crumbling apart, and this can be seen in biology. When biological creatures come together, make love, and have babies, they pass on their DNA and genetic information to their babies. And this is where the second law of thermodynamics comes in. With each new generation, there is a loss of genetic information, not an addition. The second law of thermodynamics can be seen in dog kind, for example. Hundreds of years ago, we had the mighty wolves. And as they passed on their genes to different generations, we have gradually seen corgis and Labradors, and eventually chihuahuas that you could just put in your pocket. Biological creatures are not growing, they're getting weaker. So I do believe that animals do change over time, but here's the catch. Dogs remain dogs. Still part of the dog kind. I'd also like to briefly mention the next law of the universe, biogenesis. This is a biological scientific law which dictates that life can only come from pre-existing life. You can't expect life to form by itself. It requires some intellectual, willing people to make life. Scientists have been trying hard for years to create life in a lab. Several experiments come to mind when I hear about this. There were scientists who tried to genetically alter a fruit fly embryo. And yet, despite all of their scientific advantages, the fruit fly embryo somehow always miraculously got its way back on course to being a fruit fly, which means that nature is goal-directed. The end results of said fruit fly embryo tests were the following. Either a normal fruit fly, a mutated fruit fly, or a dead fruit fly. And the experts say they don't even get a horsefly, let alone a horse. And there have been scientists like Pasteur who has thoroughly proved that life doesn't emerge by itself, but I can let you research Pasteur later. The next law of the universe I'd like to mention is the law of causality. No matter how much you dissect into things, it always has a cause that came before, to quote Mephiles from Sonic 06.
Just as a flower comes from a seed, or a chicken comes from an egg, everything has an origin.
And the same applies to the universe. This has already been established in the laws of thermodynamics, but it's made even more abundantly clear with the cosmological argument. The cosmological argument goes as follows. Premise 1. Anything that exists has an explanation of its own existence, either in the necessity of its own nature or in an external explanation. Premise 2. The universe has an explanation for its own existence, and that explanation is grounded in a necessary being. Premise 3. The universe exists. Duh. Presence 4. Therefore, the universe has an explanation of its existence. Premise 5. Therefore, the explanation of the existence of the universe is grounded in a necessary being. And if we were to deny that everything which exists has an explanation, then it would undermine the very notion of science. Indeed, the modern founders of science took on science because they believed everything had an order to it. They believed in a legislator of the natural law. They believed that a designer fine-tuned the universe. That's the next law of the universe, the fine-tuning. If the universe were even a fingernail out of place, it would cease to be. Even people like Stephen Hawking admitted that if planets and stars were in any other position, or if the universe emerged in a different way, then life as we know it would cease to exist. And yet, here we are. The more that scientists look into outer space and everything that science works, the more obvious it is that there's this design to everything. There's this beauty in the fact that it seems that it was just meant to be. The universe begins to look less like an accident and more like a well-intended plan. Now, of course, today you still get people who are objecting to said scientific statements, but one simple question is needed for such skeptics. Were you there to see it? Were they there to see it? The skeptics admit no, and they also admit they don't know. The next law of the universe I'd like to bring up is the law of non-contradiction. So two opposites cannot be the same. If you want an excellent example of contradictions, just go to the Kyler Show and type up a contradicting story.
Now tell you a long short story from my future many ages ago. It was a cold, warm night and the sun was bright. I couldn't sleep and had a vague dream.
Two opposites cannot be true at once. For example, I could say to you, I cannot speak a word in English. There's a contradiction there. I just spoke several words in English. So in order to see how the universe functions, we need to talk about all the other laws we said prior, in order to come up with a satisfying viewpoint that doesn't contradict itself. Scientists have tried to suggest that the universe could have come by itself, but they've overlooked the simple fact that nothing ever creates itself. To say that something came out of nothing is self-contradicting. They attempt to redefine the initial cause with gravity or a quantum vacuum, but the problem is, those things are not nothing, those things are something. So the question implies for anything that needs a cause. Where did gravity and the quantum vacuum that they speak of come from? They have not solved the initial problem, they've delayed the inevitable. Let me make this clear one more time. Nothing gets you nothing. What's on this hand? A ball. What's on this hand? Nothing. Whoopsie! I dropped the ball. Now the ball's on the floor because it dropped out of my hand. That event had a cause. Whoopsie, dropped it. Dropped what? Nothing. Oh, nothing's on the floor because from nothing, you get nothing. Nothing is that which does not exist. That's a dictionary term. And in case I haven't driven this point home any further, Aristotle once described nothing as that which rocks dream about. So the universe could not have come out of that which does not exist. The universe was created. Before I get to my final point to make you think, I should also note something interesting, in that some scientists nowadays are rejecting the Big Bang model. They still agree that the universe had a beginning, and that the second law of thermodynamics thoroughly debunks the thought that the universe is eternal. But the initial thoughts behind not having a big explosion is because big bangs don't really create order, they cause chaos. If you encounter an explosion, you'd probably ask, where did that come from? Indeed. You'd probably ask yourself, what went wrong? So to summarize, nature did not magically arrange itself to create the universe because that would contradict the laws of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics dictating that matter cannot be self-created nor self-destroyed by natural causes, and the second law dictating that everything is disintegrating and losing energy. Biogenesis thoroughly states that life can only come from pre-existing life, and the law of causality dictates that everything that had a beginning has a cause. The universe is finely tuned to a razor's edge, and nothing gets you nothing. So, here is my final point. Almost everyone admits that space, matter, and time had a beginning. Space, matter, and time could not have created the universe because it's in the universe. In order to find out how the universe was made, we have to go outside it. J. Warner Wallace, a homicide detective, once said, "In a crime scene, there's only so much you can explore and discover inside the box. In order to find out the cause of the box, you need to go outside the box in order to find out what created the box." For example, does this unicorn explain the existence of this book? No, C.S. Lewis does, because he made the book, he created the unicorn, and the same laws apply to the universe. So, if space, matter, and time had a beginning, then there must be an unmoved mover outside of space, matter, and time. So, and this is an argument brought up by Dr.Frank, by the way, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, in order to make materials possible, powerful in order to create everything, intelligent in order to fine-tune and design everything, and personal in order to initiate the creation of everything, spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, powerful, intellectual cause, who do you think of? I'll just end the video for you to think about that. Because I solemnly swear that I am telling the truth and nothing but the truth. And these are real philosophical and scientific laws that you can look up and research for yourself. I've noticed that these laws are not really taught in today's education system, so there you go. What I've presented is coherent to how the universe functions, and the message of hope I want to give to you is that you are not an accident. You have value and you have a purpose in this amazing universe of ours. Thus the heavens and the earth and all the host of them were finished.